As a field service engineer, you're going to have many types of expenses related to the job. In this video, I'm going to do my best to cover all the different types of expenses you're probably going to have as a field service engineer. If you're someone that's interested in a career field change or even becoming a field service engineer, you're going to want to watch this video for an inside scoop of the typical expenses a field service engineer is going to have while on the job. Welcome back to Untitled Label, where we strive for greatness through optimization. I'm John. I'm a field service engineer as well as an entrepreneur, and on this channel we talk about all things relating to being a field service engineer. These types of expenses typically deal with travel, food, and other kind of home office related expenses. The first type of expense I'm going to primarily focus on is going to deal with travel. Now, under travel, I have three different types of expenses you're going to have to pay attention to as a field service engineer. These travel related expenses typically deal with booking flights, hotels for your stays when you're out of town, as well as rental cars for when you need to get around when you're out of town. Part of being a field service engineer is being able to manage your expenses, keep receipts, and do good admin work in order to make sure you're getting reimbursed for the money that you're spending on behalf of work. Something that is actually free and doesn't cost anyone anything is subscribing to this channel and smashing that thumbs up button. This is a great way to help me help Untitled Label grow overall, and like I said, it doesn't cost you a single thing. And for those that are on Instagram, make sure to check out Batmain. When it comes down to it, you're probably going to have a company card that you can use to spend mainly for expenses. However, you may have the option to use your own personal credit card. If that is the case for you, you're gonna probably want to do this as you're going to be able to earn points, which can later on be used for other things that you want to use it for. So in a way, it's a double win as long as you're making sure you're tracking all your receipts, all your expenditures, and making sure when it comes time, you're getting those things turned in on time. That way you're getting the money back to pay off your credit card on time. Hopefully I don't have to go in depth as to the importance of paying off your credit cards or your debt, because that's gonna affect your credit score in the long run. Your job is not worth damaging your credit score. So make sure if you're using your own personal card, you're getting those receipts turned in on time when they're needed, and you're paying off your credit cards on time as well. As previously mentioned, the top three expenditures that you'll probably have as a field service engineer are going to be related to your flights, hotels, and car rentals. These three things together combined probably are going to be the highest cost of expenditures when it comes to doing this job. You're going to want to keep track of these expenditures, as oftentimes for me, these are between over hundreds of dollars to possibly thousands of dollars that I'm charging on my credit card. So making sure you're putting these in your database, whatever your company uses to track your expenditures. For me, my company uses Concur. So if you're using Concur, make sure as soon as you're booking flights, you're getting receipts in mail, you're tracking those things and you're adding them to your Concur list. That way, come the week that it's due to be sent off to your manager, whoever approves your expenditures, they're doing so in a timely basis. At the end of the day, you're on the hook for the money that you're spending on behalf of work. So why would you want to sit around and just wait on getting that money back? Now, if you're someone that's using a company card, this is also equally as important to pay these things off, as if you max out your card, you're not going to be able to book further travel, further flights, etc. This is going to impact your ability to perform the job if you have to go out of town. This isn't something that's good, because this not only impacts you, but it impacts the people that are around you and working with you. If you can't go somewhere, other people are having to shift their schedule around to accommodate you not being able to travel. As a field service engineer, travel again is a big part of the job. I don't want to go too in depth also with pricing and etc., but most likely you're going to have a company guideline that tells you how much you can spend on flights, hotels, and rental cars. Make sure you're operating within those means as best as possible. If you do have to go outside of those means, outside of those numbers, make sure you reach out to management to make sure that's going to be okay. I know personally I have to travel to Boston Boston usually has a pretty high cost of, I don't know, just living in general. So oftentimes to book hotels, I have to play around with the dates or the numbers in order to be able to fall within my company guidelines. This might be the case for you. Just make sure you do your appropriate research and reach out to people that are above you to make sure you're not overstepping any boundaries when it comes to expenses. Another thing that would really suck is overspending and not being able to qualify for that expense, and then you're on the hook for paying that back as well. Now that I've gotten the big ticket items out of the way, let's talk about meals. So as a field service engineer, when you're on travel, you're going to have a meal allowance for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At least I hope you do. If you don't, you might want to look around to other companies, to be honest with you. Because if you're out of your home area, I don't think that you paying for your own food is okay. One, you're traveling for the job, so the company that you work for should be accommodating your meals. Just like your flights, hotels, and rental cars, your meal allowance is going to also be in your company guidelines. You want to make sure you're operating within those guidelines for each meal that you purchase or buy. Again, you're going to want to take screenshots or pictures of those receipts as you get them. And to be honest, I like to at least take the picture. That way I have it on my phone. Or if I even have the time, I go ahead and expense that right away and concur. That way later on, I don't forget and it's not a meal that ended up being on me out of my own paycheck. The key to staying on top of your expenses is doing as soon as possible. Over time, people get lazy, people forget. You don't want to be one of those people that you're actually spending company money, but it's actually coming out of your pocket. And if you are, then you have a lot more money than I have. So congrats to you. One thing to note is depending on your employer, if they're okay with it, you might be able to play around with some of the numbers when it comes to meals. For example, if you don't eat breakfast, you might be able to spend a little bit more on dinner. But overall, you should still have a daily limit that you have to operate within. Next thing, let's talk about gas. Gas is going to be another expense that you may have as a field service engineer. I know for me, my company pays for my gas as long as I'm traveling to and for work, which is oftentimes during the middle of the week. I work a lot from home, so a lot of my travel is mainly done for work, especially being in Houston in the suburbs. I travel downtown to work in the medical center. So my gas is usually expensed for work. Again, your company may have different parameters, different limits. So make sure you check your company guidelines to make sure you're operating within those. One cool perk that more modern companies are implementing is giving you a bonus or a stipend if you're driving an electric vehicle. So let's say you're driving something that doesn't require gas, you might get an extra bonus allowance on top of maybe your car allowance, or even if you're driving a company car, that kind of doesn't play a role here. But if you're using your own vehicle and let's say it is electric, there is a possibility that your company may actually give you a little bit extra money each month for just having an electric vehicle. So if that's you, you're interested in electric vehicles, make sure you take advantage of that opportunity as well. Now, as someone that tries to learn a lot about paying taxes, etc., I hate tolls. So I still have to use them here because my main highway is literally the worst highway in America as far as wrecks, crashes, etc. It's not very safe driving on I-45. So using a toll road is much preferred and gets me usually to my customer site, especially in the medical center, being in Houston, a lot faster. So tolls that you incur can sometimes be written off as business expenses for work, of course. Also, oftentimes when you're out of town, let's say you're using a rental, those tolls can also be expensed as part of your rental per se. Important note while we're on the topic is don't take advantage of the system. Now, I've worked with other people that have kind of abused the system over time, not necessarily as field service engineers, but usually rules are put into place because something happened and a rule was broken. So if you're someone that's a habitual rule breaker, line stepper per se, just think about your coworkers, think about people that you work with. Don't make their life harder because you want to have a little bit more fun and a little bit more leeway. Keep it simple, keep it fair. That way the status quo is met by everyone across the board. Now, the next thing on our list is going to be home internet expense. As someone that has a home office, primarily works from home, I'm able to expense part of my monthly internet bill for work. Oftentimes, this is about 50 bucks. Now, this is going to vary based on your company, and make sure you're actually able to do this. But if you're a field service engineer that's primarily working from home, or you have a home office, most likely that company that you work for, they're going to allow you to expense a certain dollar amount based on your internet usage. While we're on the subject of home internet use, I'm gonna tie in things like paper for your printer, ink for your printer. Oftentimes, as a field service engineer, you have reports that you have to complete, print off, and sign off. I know for me, I have to. They're called IQOQs. Now, whenever you're using these things to complete these reports, you're able to expense them as they are work related. Now, let's say you're out of town and you have to run to your local FedEx, get some stuff printed off, get some stuff scanned. This will also count as an expense that you can write off for work. Oftentimes, this is the same thing as I previously just mentioned. If it is work related and you're doing stuff for work, you're able to expense these things as long as you have a receipt and input it into Concur or whatever application that you use to track your field service engineer expenses. The last thing I'll tie into expenses are going to be any work related tools that you may have to buy. I know for me, oftentimes there are like little tools that may break while I'm using them that I may have to run to Home Depot, run to my local hardware store, and buy new ones if I'm unable to get them in time from my service support engineers. So oftentimes these little tools can be purchased. Just make sure you keep your receipts, make sure you expense them, and make sure certainly that they're work related. Simply put, if you're not sure if something could qualify as a work related expense, ask your supervisor, ask the person above you or a coworker that has more experience, of course, if that thing, whatever you're trying to purchase, is an actual work expense. It's also important to make sure you get in your company guidelines and make sure you're following those numbers to a T. That way you're not abusing the system and ruining it for everyone else that you work with. At the end of the day, you want to spend the company money cautiously as if it is your own. This is going to help the company overall if everyone is doing their little part to make sure we're staying within our budget. I really hope you guys got some value out of this video. If you did, again, like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and smash that thumbs up button. With that said, I'll catch you on the next one.